TLR-7 time. We've had a bunch of questions about compatibility with the new TLR-7X and the TLR-7 HLX. So I want to go over a couple of variants, show you a couple of light examples, and explain what is and isn't compatible with our holsters and most other holsters in the concealed inside the waistband space. So first off, we have the TLR-7. The original version had these kind of crappy sideways switches. I didn't like them. I don't think anybody liked them. And they changed that up relatively quickly. The TLR-7A has those replaceable high or low position switches that are in line with the axis of the light. That's excellent. And then they released the TLR-7 sub. The TLR-7 sub was to get TLR-7-like functionality on even smaller guns like your P365s, 365Xs and XLs, your G43 48s, your Hellcat and Hellcat Pro, and your SIG X Macro. And so that is a different shaped body, similar specs, different rail clamps and rail keys for different versions of the light. So the body is the same, and you can either have SIG rail clamps or Glock rail clamps or 1913 Picatinny rail clamps or Springfield Hellcat rail clamps. And then you need to choose the appropriate key for that firearm and the appropriate rail clamps. Now they've got the TLR-7X, which is, as far as I've been told, we don't have a TLR-7X in the shop to show you in the video, internal changes only compared to the TLR-7A, but the TLR-7 HLX, the high lumen X, totally different bezel. You can see immediately, not close, not a small difference. And so this will cause, if you put this light on a gun and put it in like our Spark holster for Glock with TLR-7, that extra bezel length will cause the gun to dead end before it's fully inserted in the holster, which will leave your trigger guard uncovered, which is not safe. So if you have a holster that was designed for the TLR-7 or TLR-7A and you put an HLX variant in it, you could suddenly expose significantly more of the trigger guard, so don't do that. In terms of just taking this larger bezel and swapping it onto other lights, the geometry problem will stay the same. So if you have a holster that fits a TLR-7 sub and you swap an HLX head onto it, it will no longer fit the TLR-7 sub because the head size destroys the compatibility. The question of what you get in terms of performance and runtime and lumen output if you just swap this onto an older light, I don't really know the answer to that. It's not really my area. The other thing is that the X also can use a rechargeable battery. And so certainly whatever internal changes were required for the X series are also involved in using the HLX head. So I would not encourage anyone to just, well, currently you can't buy the head separately as far as I know. I haven't found it anywhere. So if you were to buy a TLR-7 HLX just to strip the head off and throw it on a TLR sub, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So my current recommendation and what we're doing at Henry Holsters is we are going to be developing versions of our Glock and FN Spark holsters for the TLR-7X HLX. And if there are other light-bearing TLR-7 holsters coming and the gun is longer than the HLX, we'll support the HLX immediately. What I don't want to do is force anybody who's got the older TLR-7A to always have to carry a holster that has that added length in the bezel, if we can avoid it. So probably we will be making HLX variants of some of our popular light-bearing holsters, but we're not going to be obsoleting out the TLR-7 7A versions necessarily because there are so many of these lights out in circulation that we want to continue supporting them without penalizing people and forcing them to carry that extra holster length right at the light bezel where it's most likely to interfere with your leg and cause comfort issues. As far as the TLR-7 sub goes, I have seen pictures but not have had my hands on yet a TLR-7X sub. And whether or not that 7X sub will be fully compatible with the HLX head, I don't know. I am sure Streamlight is still working on that, and I'm not going to say anything about 8s or 8 subs because just not. So I expect we will see a higher output lumen version of the TLR-7 sub in the near future, and we will burn that bridge when we come to it. But for now, we are continuing all of our TLR-7 sub embers as they are. We are continuing our TLR-7 7A sparks as they are, and we are going to be looking at developing some new models for the HLX, but those do not necessarily replace the old holster models. Hope that was helpful. 7, 7A, 7 sub, X, HLX, HLX. These lights, this is one of the main challenges in holster making for small lights, is these lights have a much, much shorter product life cycle than larger duty grade lights like the TLR-1 and the X300. Because those large lights have been adopted by federal agencies and military, the companies have to maintain those products in a much longer life cycle. They can't just obsolete them out and replace them with something new every SHOT Show. And that's a real challenge for holster makers, because every time a change like this comes along, we have a whole bunch of mold work to do. And it's not fast and it's not free. So the cost benefit of constantly chasing the next version of the light, if you carry a subcompact light, and as a holster maker, constantly having to develop new molds for the latest variant that's slightly non-compatible. It's not my favorite part of being a holster company, honestly. Anyway, hope that was helpful. Have a great night.